Hey BookTube! So today's a kind of controversial video. The kind that divides opinion. Mainly yours and mine. I can already see the salt in the comments. Yeah, I'm finally doing it. I'm finally going to talk about popular book series that I am just never going to read. Obviously, it goes without saying, none of what I'm going to say in this video is a personal attack against you or your favourite series. We just have differences in opinions. Different tastes in books. So I'm not going to be holding anything back in this video. Like, there's some pretty big series on my list to talk about here. So, I mean, I'm very sorry if your favourite book comes up, but I'm just not going to read it. So, without any further ado, here are the 11 popular book series that I am just never going to read. So, number 1 on my list, and I can already kind of see the hate in the comments. Yeah, the first popular book series that I am just never going to read is the Villains series by Victoria Schwab. So, Vicious, and then whatever the one after Vicious is. I think there's just 2. So I know that these are fairly well beloved, like, booktube type books. I feel like everyone's read them at this point, and I'm just never gonna join you. Initially, like, back when I was like first starting up booktube, and before that when I was watching a lot of other booktubers, I like heard people talk about this book a lot, but no one ever really actually gave me like a proper plot synopsis. So I heard all these sort of like vague terms about like how great it was and like all this other stuff, and I kind of thought, oh yeah, you know, I think I would like to get into that. That's when I actually went and looked at like the synopsis for real, and as far as I'm aware, I'm pretty sure it's just like a kind of modern day, like set in more or less the real world kind of superhero story, and like, no. Do you know, if there's some things that I just don't like, I really hate any book that's set in like more or less the modern day or the real world, and I just have no interest whatsoever in the whole like modern day superhero, supervillain kind of thing. I just don't. Superhero stuff, especially in books, is just not a genre that I enjoy whatsoever. It's like, it's the reason why I never got into like comics. And the thing is, like, some of the things that I heard about like the characters from this series did sound really good, but I just don't want to read about like anything like modern day, and I really don't want to read about superheroes, so I'm just never gonna read this book series. You could make this whole concept so much better if it were just set in like pretty much any other time period. Like, if you give me this, but like, I don't know, like Victorian or something, then maybe I'm a lot more interested. So yeah, I'm really sorry, but I'm never going to be reading Vicious and whatever the other one is by, is it Victoria Schwab? V.E. Schwab? I don't even know which name she writes under for this series, and I don't need to. Okay, is anybody still here, or have you all clicked away in hate? Okay, so the second popular book series that I'm just never going to pick up is the Shatter Me series by Tahara Moffi. Now, I've heard from a lot of other booktubers that these books sort of had like a glow up in terms of the story, and that even though they're like kind of admittedly trash at the beginning, apparently they get better. But like, I guess I'm one of those people where if you tell me that like I have to read some kind of meh books in order to get to ones that are actually starting to get decent, maybe I would just prefer to read a series that's good from book 1. That, and you probably all know by now, like, I'm not a huge fan of like romance, especially anything like love triangle, and I've heard that this book is like very sort of like cliche kind of romance heavy. And yeah, as much as this tends to be like a really popular book series on booktube, I just don't think I'm ever going to read it. I just don't think I would enjoy this series. The third popular book series that I'm just never going to put my hands on is the Divergent series by Veronica Roth. Also, can we just like admire for a second that despite the fact that I'm never going to read any of these series, I'm remembering the authors' names, and I don't have the authors' names written down, I just have the book names written down. So like, I feel kind of proud of myself, and this tells me like how many times I've heard these books talked about by other people on booktube. Like, it's drilled into my brain. It's useless information because I'm never going to read it. So yeah, I know that this is one that sprung up like in the wake of the Hunger Games, and it's another one of those like typical YA dystopian novels, like where some teenage girl saves the world sort of thing. I think I've seen like one of the movies, or like part of one of the movies. From what I remember, the concept is just absolutely ridiculous. It's something about like splitting people into different groups, and supposedly like that's it. You just have like 5 personality types or something, and like that's it. I think maybe if I'd been younger and knew that this existed like when it first came out, then it might have been something that I picked up. But again, things like, you know, lack of dragons kind of play a part in why I never read this book back when I was younger and it was more popular. And now that I'm older and I've pretty much grown out of most things like YA dystopia, I just can't see myself ever picking up this series. I've heard that like the last book is apparently really bad as well, so like I'm kind of glad I didn't ever have to deal with that. You know, sometimes there are benefits to not reading things. But yeah, YA dystopia is just a genre that I pretty much never ever touch. Ever? It's just not the genre for me. So I've never read them and I am never going to. Series number 4, and I'm coming for your childhoods. I have never read and never will read the Percy Jackson series. I know, I'm very sorry. The thing is, this series is kind of different from the rest. It's one where I think I would have really loved to read these as a kid. I feel like, because I love like Greek mythology and Roman mythology and Norse mythology, and I know the author, is it Rick Riordan? I know he's done like loads of like books for children based on various mythologies, and that would have been something that I would have devoured as a child. But the thing is, I am no longer a child, and I don't feel like a middle grade book would entertain me in the slightest nowadays. It is unfortunate, like I think I would have really liked these if I had read them as a kid, but I don't even know if they were out when I was like still reading kids books as a kid, so I think it's just unfortunate that I missed these ones, but now that I've missed them, it's just like, I'm just never gonna go back to read them. It sucks, but sometimes that's just how it is. I will never know the glory of camp, whatever it's called. Okay, series number 5, and like, if you're not already like coming at me with like torches and pitchforks and things, series number 5 that I'm just never ever going to read is the Caraval series, and I don't remember who it's by. I think is it Caraval Legendary and Finale? I think they're the 3 books in this series. And again, I know that a lot of booktubers really enjoyed this series, but the thing is, I'm going to admit something to you that's potentially embarrassing, but here it goes. I do not know which book is Caraval and which one is The Night Circus. I hear everyone talk about these books. I think maybe they have similar themes. I think it's because there's like shows and circusy kind of, I don't entirely know. I think Caraval is maybe the one where there's like 2 people and they're waiting for like the show to come round and they get a ticket invited and then they go and one of them goes missing and it's a game. Potentially, but like I could be talking about The Night Circus for all I know. I genuinely don't know which one is which. And it doesn't matter how many like wrap-ups or hauls or anything, like it does not matter how many times I hear about other booktubers talk about one book or the other book, I will only ever remember that one synopsis and I never remember which one it's for. I think it's for Caraval, but like I could be really wrong. Oh yeah, that's, yeah. Either that is the synopsis for the book, and to be fair, I just don't care about that sort of like setup. It doesn't really sound that gripping to me. It doesn't sound like the kind of book that I'd really be interested in. And if that's not the right synopsis for this book, if this book has a different description, then clearly no matter how many times I've heard it, it's just not stuck in my head and I've forgotten it, so it must not be something that I want to read. I know this is like a really arbitrary reason to like completely like cut off a book and say no, I'm just never going to read that, but honestly, for this reason, I'm just never gonna read Caraval. Okay, this next one is where I'm gonna get assault in the comments, and I know it. And it's because I am never ever going to read the A Court of Blit and Blit series by Sarah J Maas. I don't know if this has like a proper name, but I know the first one is A Court of Thorns and Roses is the first one. The main reason that I'm not gonna read this is because I slogged my way through the whole like Throne of Glass series. They're all back there, and like they were kind of okay. It was kind of like eating toast without anything on it. Like, it doesn't taste bad, but also I would prefer toast with something on it, you know what I mean? And that's kind of how I felt about her writing in general. It's just like, it's kind of just like plain toast. I've heard that in this series, the thing that she does put on toast is a whole load of dick. Now, I'm sure that like dick on toast is great for some people. This is a really bad analogy. Basically, it's just, from what I understand, it's a gratuitous, like, adult sexual romance novel set against the backdrop of a fantasy. So it's not actually a fantasy novel. It's like, it's like borderline porn that just happens to have like a lot of backstory to get to the boning, which, like, you know, I kind of respect that, but at the same time, I don't really think I care about reading about like magical fairy dick. Call me crazy. just not what I'm here for. That's not to say that like I always turn away from like sex in literature. I think it's fine, but I just think if it's like the only thing to really read about, I mean, like there's plenty of fanfiction out there that I could go read right now if that's what I wanted. I mean, really, what more is there to say? I know that a lot of people really like these books, but again, if you're someone like me who just doesn't care about romance and doesn't care about shipping, and like, yeah, the like A Court of Dicks and Boning series is just not a series for me. It's not my thing, and so I'm never gonna read it. Like, I'm never gonna put myself through it. Okay, I think this is the 7th book series that I'm going to talk about. The next one that I'm just never going to read, and that is the Lunar Chronicles, and I think it's by Marissa Meyer. Yeah, again, these were really popular on BookTube a few years ago, and I think people still like really like them, really enjoy them. Aside from the fact that I don't really like kind of like YA, I think it's sci-fi, I don't really like YA sci-fi very much. It's just that I really don't care for retellings, especially like princess kind of retellings. Again, I think this was another like romance heavy one, and just every time I see these books, it just strikes me as being for like a younger reader. I know that like YA is YA, but I still think that there's like, you know, different variations in like who it's aimed at within like the YA bracket, and this just strikes me as being aimed at like much younger teenagers. Again, I don't know why, maybe it's the covers or because it's retellings or whatever, but it's just, I don't know, it always just kind of, every time I saw them I just kind of thought I would not like those books. And I'm sure it's nothing wrong with the books themselves, like, because I understand a lot of people like them, but again, that's just like my taste. It's just not a book series that I'm ever going to get round to. Okay, the next popular series I know is one that people already like to throw a lot of salt at, and I'm not actually sure if like any other than the first book of the series are out yet. But either way, the book that I am never going to read is Zenith. Everyone has already talked about this book to an extent where I kind of feel like I don't need to. The things that I saw reviewed like when this book first came out kind of tell me that I would really hate this book. If you pitched me like this, I think it's like an all-female crew out in the galaxy, and I'm like, that sounds cool, but then you mire it down in all this kind of, like all the stuff I've heard about just like the characters being kind of useless and the writing being kind of bad and clunky and just random nonsense words thrown in to remind you that you're reading a sci-fi, and it's just kind of like, Yeah, this is one where I'm not really going to research too much into the book because from what I've heard from everyone else, it's not worth my time. And again, if you really liked this book, then that's great for you because you read a book that you liked. But I'm very sorry if you did like this book, but so many people didn't, and I can imagine that I would probably share their opinion. So that's why I'm never going to read it. Okay, we're getting towards the end. The next popular series that I'm never going to read is the Prince of Thorns series by Mark Lawrence. This is one that is probably going to confuse people if you are familiar with the sort of stuff that I read. You would think like a super grim dark fantasy would be exactly the kind of thing that I would like to read. And you are correct, except that I think I did read part of this book. So I do hear people talking about this book series all the time. I do think that the author has written several other very popular series, but I think this was his first. And because I had heard so many people going on about how good this series was and how much they enjoyed it, I thought I'm gonna check that out. Like, I'm thinking about like looking into it and everything, but like, to be honest, the front cover looks really familiar to me, and like I can't figure out why, and I'm thinking like, oh, maybe I've just seen it like in a bookshop or something. So I went onto Amazon to have a look at the preview that Amazon gives you of like the first page or two of the book, and I start reading like the first like page of the first chapter, and I realise I'm pretty sure I already read this, or at least part of it, but I didn't ever buy the book. And here's the thing, somebody who knows more than me about things like ebooks is gonna have to back me up, but I used to have a phone, and with it I got like a free library of books, and you could like browse free ebooks, and I'm pretty sure I only ever downloaded 2 books. One of them was about some prostitute who got taken out for pasta by a vampire, and I stopped reading that very quickly because it sucked. The other one I started reading was about like a young boy, and it was after like, I think it was after like a battle or something. I just remember that there was like this whole like just place strewn with bodies being eaten by crows, and there was like some kind of cocky dialogue in there, and it sounded more or less exactly like the preview that I was reading on Amazon. And I remember that this book that I had on my phone, that, you know, that I downloaded for free as an ebook to my phone, like a free, it could have been a sample, it could have been the full book, I don't know, because I only got like 2 or 3 pages in before I thought, this fucking sucks, and like I deleted it. So I guess like one of two things could have happened there, and it's either the book used to be available for free, maybe before it got picked up by a publisher, or maybe you could just like read, I don't know, the first chapter or something for free. I don't really know how it worked. All I know is I'm pretty sure I once had a copy of this book on my phone for free many years ago, and that when I read it many years ago in ebook form, it absolutely sucked. And I don't know, maybe if this was before it got picked up for publishing, maybe it was like an earlier version that did kind of suck, and like maybe it's better now. But at the same time, I just remember it being like so cringy and so bad, and I remember just reading it and just thinking like, this is just terrible. Like it's actually making me cringe and making me think like, this is just bad. It's just bad. And I mean, out of like all the books on this list, this is the only one that I've actually read some of the book. So I feel like of all of them, this is probably like my most well-founded opinion. Honestly, I kind of wish I could find my old phone, hopefully if it would still work, and like maybe see if I had like a downloads history in like my little like ebook app thing. It's whatever came free with either a Samsung or a Sony Ericsson. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I've read the intro to at least one version of this book. Maybe it's changed, maybe that was like an early version or something, but also maybe it's the same version. And maybe I'm right and it did suck. I don't know. Okay, the penultimate series of books that I'm never going to read, and are you surprised if I tell you it's the Shadowhunter series by Cassandra Clare? Nobody's surprised. So I don't know like how many series she's done like within this world. I'm not going to read any of them. Yeah, so I do know all about like the whole controversy about her blatant plagiarism. Yeah, I mean, I understand that people can like grow as authors and whatnot, and I'm sure everything she's done for like all of the later series is probably all her own work. But again, there's just some things where it's like, I feel like this is one where if it was just like the one book, I might read it as a laugh. But there's like, what, she's written like 20 books or something now? I don't have the time to read all those. The first lot are definitely aimed at like a young teenage audience as well, which we've already established is something that I don't tend to gravitate towards. I'm too old for this stuff. So yeah, I don't think I'm ever really going to read anything by Cassandra Clare. I just really don't want to support her as a creator in any capacity whatsoever. I feel like that was a lot of salt for something that I'm not really involved with. So the last one is probably everybody's favourite answer for this kind of thing. So the last popular series that I am just never ever going to read is Twilight. This is one of those where when Twilight first came out, I was already like a big fan of like the whole traditional vampire thing, and I'm gonna be honest, I was too goth to read Twilight. I elected to never watch the movies and never read the book, and from a lot of the things I've heard about Twilight, I'm kind of glad that I made that decision for myself. I don't think I would have enjoyed it. Again, it's very romance heavy and it doesn't really portray like the main female character in a very good or admirable way, so I've heard. And you know, if I'm going to read a book about vampires, I want them to be like actual like vampires. I don't even really think I need to say a lot about this one. I just don't think that I'm ever gonna enjoy this book. I just don't think I would ever actually enjoy reading it. I feel like it would just be a waste of time for me. I feel like I would just be really annoyed reading a book like this like the whole way through. I don't want to put myself through that, so I'm not gonna. So yeah, those were the 11 very popular book series that I am just never ever going to read. And again, I'm sorry if your favourite book was on here, but just fight me in the comments, like, it's fine. So I understand that after all that, you may be sat there feeling salty. You may be thinking about going down to the comments and leaving a very strongly worded suggestion that I read your favourite book, because somehow I've put it on my list of books that I'm never going to read, and maybe that really annoys you. But wait, my dudes. After forcing you to sit through my entire rambly video, I am going to allow you an option for revenge. Because I am going to give you guys the option to force me to read just one of the books on this list. So I hope you understand that with great power comes great responsibility. So yeah, go check out the poll and leave a vote. And you can also leave a comment if you also want to rage at me, you know. I won't take it personally, even if it's, I probably should actually. But yeah, I will eventually get back to you guys and let you know which book won the poll and which book I am going to be picking up kind of against my will and somehow fitting in with all the other reading that I have. And I will let you guys know if you were right and if I was wrong. I mean, maybe I'll read it and I'll hate it and then I'll be right and then I'll never trust you guys again. But we won't know till that happens. So I know a lot of people make videos like these, but hopefully this gives you some way to, like, you know, I guess strongly encourage me. So yes, hopefully you guys enjoyed this, or didn't hate it, or like don't hate me for doing this. I know a lot of like well-liked and popular books were on this list, but again, that's the whole point of the video. Like, I'm not just gonna make a list about obviously bad books that I'm never gonna read, because obviously I'm not gonna read them. The whole point is, you know, these are kind of controversial. These are books where I'm like going against the grain. I'm kind of an outlier. Everybody else loves these things. But yeah, hopefully this won't forever taint your opinion of me. If it has, you probably didn't have that good of an opinion of me anyway. So now that that's all said and done, this is the end of the video. Hopefully you'll consider checking out the rest of my channel if you don't already hate me so much for bad-mouthing your favourite book. And in that case, maybe, hopefully, I will see you guys in another video. Bye!